Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage CEO of RouteHappy by ATPCO, Mr. Robert Alberts.
Hello again. You got one more to go before lunch, and I hope that this is the best. So we at ATPCO and in the industry are here for airlines, right? We're in service of the airline industry, so who should we be hearing from but airlines? So it is a great privilege for me to introduce the heads of distribution for the big 3 US airlines. And I'd like to invite our friends from Delta, United, and American onto stage for an introduction. The 4 of us think that this may be the first time in history that, or no, sorry, in the recent past that this has happened where the big 3 US airlines are on stage together. So very excited about this. We're going to be talking about the future of airline retailing from airlines themselves. So I'd like to introduce Jeff Lobl from Delta Airlines, Tye Radcliffe from United, and Neil Geurin from American Airlines. Enjoy. Thank you. Oh. And so after the presentation, we will be doing a panel. So please, your app, you can submit questions if you find this session, submit questions during their presentation or during the panel. And we will, I will definitely bias towards your questions rather than mine. So please submit questions. Enjoy.
Thanks, Bob. All right, so what's so important that Delta, American, and United are all standing here together to talk to you guys? And furthermore, we're doing it in front of 340 people, and we're standing between you and your lunch. So the reason that we're here is because in the few short minutes that we're going to be standing on this stage, 1,000 customers between the 3 of us that are shopping on our indirect channels are going to buy a product that was not the right product for them. And a further 300 customers are going to give up on the experience entirely and just go to our websites and forget about shopping on the indirect channels at all anymore. That's the call to action. To us, that is a major problem because the indirect channels are critical to the success of all of us. And not only all of us, but all of us. Our most important customers are doing their shopping through the indirect channels. And so we need to do what we can to go elevate that experience, and so we can stop leaking all of the revenue that's leaking away, but also producing the negative customer experiences that are happening. So why is this happening? In order to understand, we need to step back in time. Once upon a time, this industry was actually relatively simple, at least from a distribution standpoint. There were 2 classes of service, right? There was first class and there was economy class. It was one size fits all. The only interesting thing about that first class picture is there's actually someone sitting in a seat. Because as we know, through most of history, the first class cabin was not priced to sell. So it was pretty much economy class. And the experience was one size fits all. So there was no difference in the onboard experience, there was no difference in the boarding experience, there's no difference in the seats you got. It was a one size fits all experience. And so there was only one objective for shoppers, and that was to find the lowest fare. And so it's no accident that our entire distribution network was built around identifying the lowest fare and selling the lowest fare. It made perfect sense at the time. But that was yesterday. And today, we're in a dramatically different world where the days of first class and economy class have been replaced by this. And that's just for the 3 of us that are standing here. If we multiply that by all the other carriers that are here, I believe there were 81 airlines, there's 78 others, and if we take their products and we put them on this sheet, that poor lady at the bottom is going to be buried like an old dinosaur bones. So the challenge then becomes, what do we do when the airlines have evolved our product lines to provide different experiences to different customers and different value propositions with a wide variety of choice. What happens when that bumps up against a distribution network that was built and continues to be oriented around the lowest fare?
Thank you, Jeff. So one of the things we want to take a look at is how the airlines are evolving our own website. So the first thing you see up here is American Airlines. And for those of you in the back of the room, I'll try to take a moment to explain what you're looking at. On the far left side, of course, you have your flight information and times, but then you have basic economy, main cabin, business, and then first. So think of it as left side is the least expensive, moving to a nicer and nicer experience for the customer all the way over to the right. This is my website, United Airlines, same type of thing. The first column you see there is basic economy, and then standard economy. Moving further to the right, your right, you're seeing a nicer and nicer experience for the customer, and it gets more and more expensive. And then, of course, Delta. It looks, very similar. The customer is starting to get used to this experience where, okay, I'm seeing the most cost-effective option on the left, sort of bare bones, and as I move to the right, I have a better and better experience. And so the key point is, though, when our customers are booking in third-party channels, they don't always get that same experience. In fact, they often don't. Here's an image of a corporate booking tool. And basically, you're seeing a list of flights with prices. Now, in fairness, if you drill down, you do start to see some different fare type opportunities. But that initial display is a 180 from what a lot of the airlines in the room are trying to do in terms of that display. A popular OTA, same type of thing. Again, there are drill down opportunities, and fully aware that we're trying to take 500 airlines throughout the world and figure out how to boil all those products and services into something that's easy to consume. That's not an easy task. I only have to worry about United. But I think that there is this disparity between what customers are seeing on a supplier site and what they're seeing in third-party channels. Another example here of what you might see. But what all this is leading up to is this. In the indirect channels, if you're a customer that's shopping through a TMC or an online booking tool, you are 3 to 4 times less likely to buy one of our premium options. Now, this is not to say that the TMCs are doing a poor job. I would hazard a guess to say that most of the business and first class tickets that we sell indeed come through third parties. They come through agencies that are selling business tickets, no question about it. But in terms of upselling to a better economy experience or something that, when they didn't specifically search for the business class cabin, it's less likely to have customers even know that those other products exist. And then in the OTA channels, the customers are 3 to 4 times more likely to buy the basic economy because in many cases, they don't even realize exactly what they're buying.
Thanks, Tye. Yeah, and I imagine if you're in the room and you are a third-party channel, some of this may sound a little self-serving that we'd be standing up here saying this. And the reality is, with all of those differences that we've walked through here, we are all seeing pretty tremendous growth in our direct channels. Customers are moving away from other channels and coming to our direct channels for some reason. I can't speak to Delta and United and how they work to drive more direct bookings, but I can tell you at American, this isn't a result of us spending a lot more money on marketing. It's that customers actually want to engage with products and services in a different way than they have in the past. And so what I'd say about that is if you are in the room as an airline, a great opportunity for you if you haven't engaged on this front. There's a lot of opportunity to win new business. If you're a third-party channel, this is what you're competing with to some degree, not just with the airlines, but also with other parties who are starting to move down this path. And so it really does feel like customers are starting to demand more information, demand a better experience, and as they do, we're seeing better results on the revenue front across all of our airlines. So we haven't really talked about NDC, but when we talk about just those fare buckets, whether it's main basic economy all the way out to first class and all the differences that come with that,
That's great, but what's coming down the pipe with NDC is a whole lot more variation, you know, whether it's offers and content, and it's bundles and all sorts of different ways that we could progress to showing products and services in new and fresh ways for customers, depending on how those customers want to see them. That's great. That's going to add to the abilities. It's also going to make it harder. To Tye's point, there's going to be a lot of options out there that we'll have to consider as a whole industry. But what it won't do is modernize displays. I think that's the dirty little secret of NDC, is that we can do all the work we want to do as an industry to make it happen, but if it doesn't actually show up to the customer when they're making their booking, we haven't done ourselves any good at all. So this is an area we think is really ripe for improvement going forward. And it's not just us. There's a lot of agencies that are making headway on this. I see Jeff Klee taking a picture of his own website. So, way to go, Jeff. So we've got lots of agencies out there that are starting to dip their toes in these waters, and they're doing it in different ways, and they're testing and they're learning. And I think that's where we're going to be for the next year or so. But that is a really healthy place for all of us to be going forward.
So we have a dream up here, Neil and Tye and I. And we're distribution people, so we dream maybe a little differently than normal people.
Much more nerdy.
But our dream looks something like this. This is what we're calling the next generation storefront. And what we are doing is we're taking everything that is working so well for us on our direct channels, on our websites, and we're taking that and we're simply applying it to a third-party experience that, to Tye's point, is going beyond just one carrier. So this is a New York to Los Angeles. You can see all the different carriers, or at least a subset of the carriers that are competing on that route. You can see not just the lowest fare, but you can see all of the fares and products that are being offered, and they're being categorized in columns that help a customer understand the comparability between those products. So let me take a moment and let you guys digest this for a minute. We are not, the lowest fare is still alive and well. We know that that's still a very important product for a lot of customers. So it is still there. It is just being supplemented by other options. And the information about those other options is being represented by the little staircase there at the top that gives a sense for the difference in product attributes that exist as you go to the right side of the page. And this will be supplemented with probably icons and that sort of thing that gives a sense for what the specific attributes of each of these products are. The beauty of this to us is that it gives you all of your choices up front. As Amtrav has already figured out, and I think all of us have a lot of opportunity here, it's a much more natural shopping experience to have your choices in front of you instead of having to go click around to find them. And so that's the first big benefit of this. The second big benefit is, we like to think that the entire customer base out there has memorized and digested all of our brand names and all the product attributes that are associated with them, but that might not be completely true. And so this gives us a chance in one column to say to a customer who doesn't otherwise know that United's Economy Plus and Delta's Comfort Plus and American's Main Cabin Extra are pretty much the same experience, and then you can make your decision as to which of those you're most interested in. So this is what we view as the next generation in airline retailing. So what's taking us so long? Well, it takes all of us to get here. So this is one of those, it truly does take a village to get there. So, and this is just a subset of the obstacles, none insurmountable, between us and this dream of ours. The first is that we have to provide expanded content at first request. The idea that a first request can return only the lowest fare, and then once that is selected, then more products can be shown. I only ask if that model is being followed anywhere else in the business world besides airlines, where you have to go grab something you don't want first before you can see what your other choices are. So that's the first challenge we have, is to make all content available at initial request. The second is we've got to get away from these 4 cabin categories that I can't tell where they originated from, but this idea, no matter where you shop on a third-party channel, there's a drop-down screen, and it gives you 4 choices, which are economy, premium economy, business, and first. That no longer fits the product line of us and many other carriers that are out there. That drop-down screen, hopefully everybody knows what I'm talking about. It's the only way you can get past the lowest fare on the indirect channels. That drop-down screen needs to go find a quiet beach to go play with its friend, the telephone, and the Betamax, because that does not work anymore. And the fact that it's still sitting out there every day, and our corporate customers and other customers are using that to filter results, is not our dream, that's our nightmare. So we need to get over that one. The third is we need to be able to group products in a like way. And as Tye said, that's a challenging one, because these products that all carriers are kind of individually creating are not standardized. And so we're going to have to find a way to categorize them in a way that makes sense to a customer. Is that going to be easy? No. Is that going to take some healthy debate among carriers but also GDSs and agencies? Sure. But it can't be insurmountable, because the hotels have figured it out, right? They've got their star rating system. That's not perfect either, but it's a whole lot better than selling nothing but 1 stars. And the car rental industry's figured it out as well. They've got their categories of different types of cars, and you're not just buying the economy compact. So it has been done before. It just needs to be done now. And that is our call to action, not just from the 3 of us to all of the carriers that are here, the agencies that are here, the GDSs that are here, the online booking tools that are here. This is something that takes all of us, because without each of these challenges being addressed and solved, we can't get there. But if we can't get there, we're nowhere. And so this is in our mind the central challenge. And as Neil said, I think there's a lot of energy around NDC these days, but NDC is not going to solve this. And I love the term Neil used, which is the dirty little secret of NDC, is that we can be full scale on NDC, and we could still be living in this same world we're in today, and we're really nowhere. So that completes. I'm going to go put our mock-up back up for posterity, and we'll invite Bob back up. I think he wanted to ask us a few questions here.
But we still wanted to do NDC, by the way, just in case you took a different message.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, have a seat, guys. Thank you very much. When was the last time that everyone had an opportunity to ask American, Delta, and United questions at the same time? So I'm holding the iPad. If you open your app, please submit questions. I'll just start with some personal thoughts from the RouteHappy perspective. I think this dream is very compelling. And the reason from the one solution provider perspective is one, more choice for consumers in a simple interface, however it emerges, whether it's exactly this format, or I think there are going to be multiple formats that this emerges. So it's going to solve a major consumer problem. But from talking to both airlines and distributors, sales channels for the last 8 years about differentiation, we've consistently been asked by sales channels, can you help us organize the world's airfares so that we can display them in a more coherent way? And then airlines have, on their side asked us, how can you help us, get this information in front of shoppers? So I find this very compelling. So we're going to have a candid chat, and I invite each of you to be as candid and forthcoming as you can be, because we're going to learn a lot. So we'll start with one question. First question. Let's talk about modern flight shoppers. What do they care about most? Jeff.
So to me, when we talk about flight shopping, the customers that are doing that aren't just shopping for flights. They're also on Amazon shopping for everything in the world. They're on Zappos shopping for shoes. And so I think the whole idea that there's a separate experience for flight shopping versus just general shopping is probably hangs us up before we even can get out of the starting gate. So what do shoppers want? They want choices. They want information about those choices so they can make the best choice for them, and they just want to understand the value that's being offered. I think it's no different for airlines than for anything else. We just kind of continually draw a distinction because of some of the historical complexities in airline shopping.
So Jeff, you're not going to say it's all about the seat. It's not all about one thing. Everyone's an individual and cares about different things. Is that?
I think the seat is a very compelling part of the value proposition, but it's not the only one. People care about bags. People care about changeability. People care about seat assignments. I mean, there's other aspects as well.
I think further to that, people are different types of shoppers depending on what they're doing. I might be okay with a basic economy type trip if I'm just going like on an overnight and it's for fun and I just got a backpack. If I'm going for 3 nights and I've got to dress up, then I'm definitely going to have a carry-on, and it's a business trip, for instance, or, so taking cues from customers or just simply asking them, what kind of trip is this, helps us to be able to use some intelligence and tailor the responses to them. But if you don't ask them the question or give them a place to tell you who they are, then that, you have to make some assumptions, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah, and we learn things about our customers who are coming through our direct channels versus indirect channels. And we definitely see that we have a much higher satisfaction rate from the customers who came through the channels, who bought a product that they fully understood, that they had pictures of, that they had an idea of what they were getting into. And we get more complaints when they're coming through other channels, not realizing necessarily exactly what they've purchased. So that doesn't make them, I think to Jeff's point, that's just a customer. It's not a flight customer. That's just the world. But clearly, customers value information, and we have to do a better job of getting that out there to them.
So as a segue on that, I have found it very uncommon for an airline to talk about your experience in your own direct channels and sort of share that information with the world with indirect channels. Other than what you shared, can you share anything else about your experiences on direct channels and how that could be parlayed in indirect channels? And also, what's the receptivity from indirect channels? Are they skeptical? Are they buying into it? Where are they?
So I can at least start with that one. So I think actually one of the unique challenges within this industry is there's very little visibility into what is happening in our direct channels because it's not shared in the data feeds that we're all getting as we're evaluating each other. So I believe actually that in the indirect channels, the agencies and the OBTs, with the data that they're looking at, they can only benchmark against each other. There is and this is part of the data that Tye was sharing, it is breathtaking the difference in product mix that's occurring on our direct channels versus our indirect channels. And if the indirect channels, if the people in those channels could see what we see about what is happening on our direct channels, I think there would be much more urgency about changing what's happening in the indirect channels.
We don't have to do every question because we've got about 10 questions from the audience.
Okay.
So
can I jump into that?
Absolutely.
One thing?
Yep.
I think one thing that's important to note, though, is it sort of sounds like we have all the answers, and the fact of the matter is we don't. And the way we're getting to better results on our direct channels is we're doing a lot of testing and we're trying a lot of different things. And I think to sort of answer the second part of your question, what's happening in the indirect channels, we see a lot of really strong indirect channels that are doing the same thing. They're testing out different solutions. Not all of them are going to work. I think Jeff's point earlier about the fact that, hey, probably customers haven't memorized all of our brand names at this point is true, right? So how do we do a better job displaying that information. It's not something that we just flip a switch and we're there. There's a lot of effort behind that, and there's a lot of mistakes made along the way and a lot of learnings along the way that get us to a better spot. It sounds like, is it a fair statement to say at least the three of you are ready to share your insights from direct channels with indirect channels? Is that a fair statement?
We do share that data because that's the call to action. I mean, if they're benchmarking against each other, they're going to look very similar. What they need to understand is the difference between what's happening on the indirects and what's happening on the directs.
Yeah, I'm skipping all of my own questions and I'm going right to the audience's. How will no cabin searches work in a corporate policy world?
How
will no cabin searches work in a corporate policy world?
That's a good question.
Is it the same? Is it the same as the next generation storefront diagram, if we can bring that back?
Well, I think what you end up doing is if you've got the shelves concept up there, you say which ones are in policy and which ones are not. And so it behooves the corporate booking tool and application to be able to apply the policy to those things based on certain parameters. And maybe you come up with the trip is this many miles, and so you apply a factor of cost to those miles and you can't exceed that. Or, I've heard a lot of people coming up with total trip costs based on a lot of stuff, and so they let people pick the flight or the hotel that they prefer, and then they eat ramen noodles for the entire week because they want to save their money. And so, I think you will see policies evolve as we evolve our products as well.
And a corporate tool could take this design and design it appropriate to the corporate space, so they could shade out the out-of-policy options and
the travel policy itself will it's got to all be in sync, right? So if the travel policy is built around the old drop-down screen that needs to go vacation with the typewriter, it needs to be replaced by a drop-down screen or by standards in the corporate travel policies that equate to what a customer is looking at on an online booking tool.
All right, here's another one. In your dream, how do you define the categories? Given the proliferation of fare types and experiences, how will you keep up in the future?
Everyone's looking at me like I have the answer to this. Yeah, look, I think my dream world scenario for distribution in general is that we stop patting ourselves on the back and thinking that we've made it every time we have an innovation, right? So even if we get to this world where we're looking at a set of shelves and there's different products sitting there, odds are 5 years from now that's going to change. And my hope is that the change that we see in the industry isn't so much driven by us or the other airlines in this room, but driven directly by what customers are asking for on a daily basis. And so that may mean that we have lots of different options in the future, totally customer driven. I guess my dream world scenario is that there's enough flexibility built into our processes across all of us, GDSs, agencies, anyone else involved, that we can make those changes in something closer to real time as opposed to going through kind of year-long processes to get down that path.
And we understand that there's user experience and there's only so many columns that work for the customer, and that may vary by depending on which channel. So I don't think we want to be prescriptive and real rigid about this. And I think there's a whole lot of testing and learning that needs to take place. So I agree, Neil, that we have to be flexible, we have to evolve, and it may be different things are being shown in different channels.
And I think it's fair to say that this is a starting point. It's not like we, said this is absolutely what's going to be. I know at my company, when I come up with a new idea, I usually, sort of draw it out and then let the smart people figure out how it should actually work. And likewise, I think this is here is a put, right? We're putting this out there, and now I know that some really smart people are going to come and say, did you think about tweaking this? We should do this differently. And we're completely open, or at least I am very open to hearing what other ideas and concepts you have.
Okay, so brass tacks. Everyone thinks your own product is better. How can we manage to find a neutral and universal way to define shelves?
We talked about that a little bit earlier. That's going to be the central challenge in this. But we have to think about what the hurdle is. So today, the one common denominator we have is the lowest fare. So that's the world we're living in. If we're gonna get beyond that, and we want to have a manageable number of shelves to keep this organized for customers who at the end of the day are the ones that matter most, we're going to have a finite number that works not only on a desktop, but probably on a mobile device as well. And so there's going to have to be some effort to categorize and standardize. And it just goes back to the examples I was using earlier. It's not easy, and it's not going to be universally beloved every time, but if the hotels have done it with their star ratings and the rental cars have done it, we can do it too. We have to.
Do you see a role, so we're at a different place in the evolution of our industry with ATPCO data and RouteHappy content. There is a vast knowledge of every fare and every product in the industry. So there is data available to create an algorithm that would group similar fares, et cetera. Not trying to be self-serving here. I do have a point of view that ATPCO and RouteHappy by ATPCO would play a role in this, but what are your views of, and there is a question on this too, who is the arbiter? Does ATPCO create the algorithm? Are there multiple algorithms? How should this work?
I'll chime in, you guys can jump in as well. I think in all likelihood probably we'll have to get to something like that, but I'll tell you what gives me hope that we can get there, and it's what's happening right now in the NDC space. We're all starting to get into rooms together to talk about how do we do this better, this collaboration effort that has really taken off in the last 18 months. I think could be leveraged to have these exact same conversations, and we can use that same platform to start building on what the future looks like. It's not going to be possible to do this, in 40,000 one-off conversations. We're going to have an industry approach to this. So I think we're in a good place to start the conversation. The question will just be who coordinates, and you may be right. I don't know who the ultimate arbiter is, but that is probably something we need as an industry.
But we're at the ATPCO conference, and ATPCO is clearly a neutral, respected intermediary between all carriers. And so it seems like this needs to be objective, and this needs to have buy-in from all carriers that are affected by it. Certainly, I don't think any of us up here can design it. And I think ATPCO probably has a fighting chance to be the neutral arbiter that we need to go develop something like this.
Okay, so do you have something?
I agree.
Okay, multiple questions about systems. Where do the systems stand in shelves? Supportive, not supportive, engaged? Where are they?
It's funny, I was at a conference a few years ago where Gianni from Amadeus had a bunch of circles and triangles and squares, and he was trying to basically say that, airlines, the products are so different, so we need to find a way to line the circles and triangles and squares up in some way that's consumable by professional travel agents and by consumers. Okay, Gianni, we did it. Now you take it and build it. It's kind of what I'm thinking is we're trying our best to sort of, okay, you win, you're right. We have to come up with a way to line these things together.
And anybody who was paying attention this morning, when Dirk went up there from Sabre, he put up something that was kind of very close to along these lines, which was really, really encouraging. So I think at least that's a clear indication that Sabre is thinking about things this way.
I can attest from the ATPCO and RouteHappy by ATPCO perspective that there have been multiple conversations with the large systems in the world engaged in this topic. So this is definitely a topic that's getting momentum. Let's switch gears for a moment to the customer. Next-gen storefront looks great, but if the customer is only interested in good seat pitch, for example, should we be asking what customers want in the shopping?
Oh, do we think there are customers who care about seat pitch? Is that an attractive marketing tool for anyone? I don't think it is. All right. I get the point that people will care about comfort, but they don't necessarily care about 30 inches versus 31 because that doesn't make intellectual sense to people, right? I don't know how long my thigh bones are. I don't know how much room I need in the seat in front of me. I would like to know if I'm going to be bumping into that seat, right? So yeah, I think that there's a lot of opportunity here to do this better than we've done it in the past. And you know, when we talk about marketing these products and services, that's really how we used to do it. How close are you to the seat in front of you, which is the only thing maybe you knew about your seat, as opposed to, does it come with a free drink? Does it come with you know, Wi-Fi? What else is part of the experience?
And so what about the nuance of shop by attribute? That's a term, a phrase that you hear all the time. Should this whole thing be combined with a very robust way for consumers to just say, this is what I want, show me the results that match that, sort of, you know, filters on steroids, but up front? Is that where we're going?
I think that is. I think underneath these columns are attributes that are going to have to be used to categorize them. And if customers have different ideas on what the attributes ought to be, at some point, you'd think they could be able to kind of click out of this one and click into that one and have a new storefront in front of them that is more tailored toward what their personal interests are. Yeah. We're getting way ahead of ourselves here, but you can see a world where we evolve to something like that.
One of the truths I think that's probably true for all of us is that a lot of our customers don't fly that often. They may fly once a year or once every couple of years, and so they don't experience these products and services very often. So I think it makes sense to give people the ability to filter to what's most important to them, or at least what they think is most important to them, but also give them a little bit of information about what else might be out there, because they may not have ever experienced those products and services before.
And I think further to that, the onus is on us to make the information available in a consumable way so that people can adjust their front end and test and experiment to figure out what will work. Yeah. If we don't give you the information, you can't innovate.
Yeah.
All right, we are almost out of time, so the last few questions with quick answers. Have you done research to validate the dream? That sort of goes back to maybe your experience in direct, but yeah, any consumer research to validate this vision?
I mean, yeah, it's our direct channels. Our direct channels basically look like this, and we are drowning in information that's telling us that when customers have choices, they make those choices.
Agreed.
Okay, one tough one, and then we're going to wrap up with the last question. Is this going to re-commoditize flight shopping?
You know, we all didn't like jump and say, yeah, let's do this at first. There was some arm twisting. And that was one of the concerns, the circle and square and triangle conversation. But I think that at some point you have to say, let's do what's right for the customer, and we have to put something in front of them that's easy for them to understand. Otherwise, they just sort of get lost in this morass of data.
I find that question incredibly ironic. We're commoditized today. I mean, we've spent all this time and effort to create these experiences that are beyond just, the lowest available, and they're basically invisible, at least in initial shop, on our indirect channels. That is commoditization. And I mean, I think it's a great problem to worry about being commoditized when all of your products are being displayed, and then you aren't quite sure what column you want them to be in. But if you want a commoditization, that's where we are right now.
Yeah, I guess I'll just finish by saying that, I think one of the most important things we talked about here is that flight customers are just customers. And the reality is that they have lots of experiences with lots of other industries where they have lots of options, and that's attracting customers. And the reality for all of us is that there are going to be third-party channels that figure this out really well over the next couple of years, using what they're learning from all these different industries that they've experienced. And when we get there, we want to make sure that we are still kind of in that conversation and we're able to drive the results that we want across the entirety of the industry itself.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, last question each. I'm going to ask each of you an individual one. I hope I got to most of your questions in the audience. I tried to combine them, but there were quite a number. So Neil, what is your favorite airline retailing success story? Your own airline or anyone else's?
Yeah, well, actually, I'll pick some third-party channels. I won't name names, but there are a number of large agencies out there that are actively testing, like I was talking about earlier, different ways to display their products and services, and not all of the ways that I would pick out myself, but as they're out testing, they're learning a lot, and we're starting to see real differences in the results that we're getting through those channels. Customers more likely to book up out of basic economy, customers more satisfied when they get to the airport, and so the more of that we see, I think the better off we'll be in the long run.
Excellent. Okay, Tye, what is the, if you can do it, the single biggest challenge to modernizing flight shopping?
You didn't say single earlier. You've now added a parameter. I was going to take a moment to just say how excited United is that RouteHappy has become part of ATPCO. We're huge fans of the work you're doing, and it's exciting to us now that there's sort of this industry standard place where we can put all of this awesome content out there for people to be able to get and to consume. But that's the challenge, is now that we've got it there, is to get that information pulled into the front end channel so that people can understand what they're buying.
We are working at that with a lot of you in the audience. All right, Jeff, last one. Prediction for what we're going to be talking about next year related to future of airline retailing.
So I appreciate Tye keeping me honest earlier about NDC. We are committed to NDC, but my prediction is at this time next year, there will be a growing realization that there's a lot more value across the entire distribution chain, from airline to intermediaries, to agencies, to customers. There's a lot more value in this next generation storefront than there is in NDC. But we are committed to NDC.
Excellent. All right, thank you all, Neil, Tye, Jeff, that was excellent. Very valuable session. I don't think they're running away right now, so corner them or corner all of us at lunch, and let's keep the dialogue going because there were probably 15 more questions in here. So thank you all very much, and thank you, gentlemen.